Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to have a quick chat with you all about the guiding principle of the modern Republican Party. And I think that principle was best summed up by Donald Trump during his speech last weekend at CPAC when he said this.
I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
Honestly, when I heard that sentence, a chill ran down my spine because that's not the kind of language you expect to hear from a person who is most likely to become the Republican nominee for president in 2024. But at the same time, also should have expected it because Donald Trump has always been about retribution. Kind of thinking to some lighter moments. It came up recently that he called Disney because Jimmy Kimmel's jokes offended Donald Trump, and therefore he wanted to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. But the lighter things aside, he also did a lot of other things where he attempted to use the weight of the U.S. government to attack those who he believed to be evil. Mexicans are rapists, so we'll exact retribution by building a wall and making them pay for it. Muslims are terrorists, so we'll exact retribution by banning them from entering the country. Journalists are evil, so we'll seek retribution by making it easier to sue them and by calling them an enemy of the people. The FBI, the woke military, the intelligence agencies. I'm going to seek retribution against them by shaking up their command and trying to get rid of people who aren't loyal to me. And then, eventually, when he lost an election, I'm going to seek retribution by trying to overturn that election and essentially destroy the U.S. democratic process. So when Donald Trump says he's going to seek retribution for his followers, we know who he's going to target. He's going to target minorities, whether they're racial, ethnic, religious, LGBTQ. We know he's going to target institutions of democracy that are critical to our country, be that the legislature, the judiciary, law enforcement, the military, journalistic enterprises of all types. And when you give someone the power of the U.S. government and they swear that they're going to use it to attack all of these people and get vengeance and retribution, I think we should believe them. Unfortunately, Donald Trump is not the only person talking like this. Another prime example is Ron DeSantis, who also has a pretty decent chance of becoming the Republican nominee in 2024. Now, he has mostly been seeking retribution against schools and private businesses. On the school front, he has banned books, banned courses, and has even gone so far as to try and take over a state school in order to turn it into a conservative Christian college. Essentially saying, if you don't teach what I want you to teach and you don't agree with all of my beliefs, I'm going to either get rid of you or make it so that I can prosecute you. And either way, I'll get retribution. Against private businesses, he's enacted similar rules where businesses cannot conduct certain kinds of training where it comes to inclusion or diversity, but we all know that his biggest fight is with Walt Disney because they had the audacity to disagree with a particular bill that he had passed as to whether teachers should be able to openly discuss issues regarding homosexuality. And he really went the full George III here because he took away all of Disney's representation within their tax district, which governs Walt Disney World. And now the 5-member board that was originally appointed by Disney is now entirely appointed by DeSantis. Now, that's called taxation without representation, and if I remember my American history correct, we're somewhat against that here. We prefer to have people represented when they're taxed as opposed to having an authoritarian take their tax money and tell them how it's going to be spent. It's not very American. But let's face it, the Florida Republican legislature isn't a place for democracy right now, as other members of the legislature have proposed ideas such as forcing bloggers to register with the state if they want to discuss Ron DeSantis or any member of the Florida government. And even one member being so bold and so sure that this wouldn't impact his reelection that he put in a bill that would ban the Democratic Party from existing in the state of Florida. And I can't think of anything that is less American than that. And there are countless other examples of Republicans taking similar stances. After the overturning of Roe v. Wade, many Republican states decided to codify their religious beliefs into law and criminalize abortion, with some going so far as to criminalize the discussion of abortion, giving them several avenues through which they could seek retribution against people who don't agree with their religious beliefs. Additionally, we've seen constant attacks against the LGBTQ community, especially against those who are transgender. Again, many states have criminalized the discussion of the issues that are faced by transgender individuals, with some states going so far as to criminalize acknowledging that these people exist. We've also seen Republicans go after private companies when they're not being conservative enough. A good example of this, other than Disney, is what happened when DirecTV decided to drop Newsmax after the two companies couldn't reach an agreement on a contract. When this happened, several House Republicans decided to send DirecTV a message and say, "You had better put Newsmax back on the air, or else." There are, as I said, countless other examples, and the message that this seems to be sending is that if you are not a conservative, Anglo-Saxon, evangelical Protestant, you are not welcome in the Republicans' version of America. So now let's get to the underlying reason why a shiver ran down my spine when I heard Donald Trump say, "I am your retribution." And that's because when you take that statement and combine it with all the things we've discussed in this video and the many other things we didn't have time to discuss, it starts to remind me of another political party and another politician. Now, when this politician was trying to rise to power, his message was that our country was once great, but it is now destitute and a laughingstock on the international stage. And that's because there are certain groups, certain minorities within the country that have infiltrated our culture and begun to corrupt it. And they have betrayed our nation. One might even say, stabbed us in the back. But if you give me power, I assure you that I will use the full force of the state to ensure that I root out this corruption, that only our values are taught, and that our culture will be made pure. And I promise you that I will use the full might of the state to seek retribution against any who would dare disagree with us. And this politician wrote this all down in a book, which he entitled My Struggle, though you're probably more familiar with the title in its original language, Mein Kampf. Now, I am not trying to compare the Republican Party to the Nazi Party that we think about most often, which is the party from 1938 to 1945. However, when you combine their rhetoric, their constant attacks on minorities is the source of all of the nation's problems. Their emerging attempts to restrict freedoms of the press and other common democratic freedoms, and the fact that they have already attempted an insurrection, it is starting to look like the Republican Party is looking a little bit too much like the Nazi Party of 1923. Think about it.